Hi, and welcome back to this week's Parsha Shir on Sefer Netivot. Shalom. In this week's Parsha of Mishpatim, Shkalim, but really in the end of the Parsha of Mishpatim, we read the continuation of the story of Matan Torah, which began in Parshas Yisro. We read about the impressive scene of Nasav and Ishma, the declaration the Jewish people make in terms of their faith, being able to follow God even before they know the full rationale and reasons and details of the Torah. They profess their love to God by saying they will go forth with this mission, accepting the Torah. In the aftermath of that scene, the Torah tells us what reaction the elders of Israel who had gone up part of the way on Har Sinai with Moshe Rabbeinu had to this whole incredible scene of revelation. The pasuk says, "Ve'elatzilei b'nei Yisrael lo shalach yado, vayechazu es Elokim vayochlu vayishtu." Very strange, very difficult pasuk. And to the nobles of Israel, lo shalach yado, he, I guess God, didn't stretch out his hand. And kama vayechazu es Elokim, and they, the elders, they witnessed God in some way. Kama vayochlu vayishtu, they ate and they drank. What exactly does this pasuk mean? Number one, what does it mean, lo shalach yado, that he didn't outstretch his hand to them? Number two, what does vayochlu vayishtu have to do with vayechazu es Elokim? They saw God and they ate and they drank. What's the relationship between those two parts of the pasuk? So Rashi points us to the direction of the Medrash Tanchuma. The Medrash Tanchuma says that this pasuk is actually speaking about the disgraceful behavior of the elders. It's speaking in a critical fashion of the elders. The Atzilei b'nei Yisrael, vayechazu es Elokim. They saw the most impressive, most incredible vision of revelation of God, of God's presence. And what did they do in reaction to that? Vayochlu vayishtu. They debased themselves by coming down from this incredible spiritual height to doing the most basic physical things, eating and drinking. Imagine facing the most incredible king or queen that you've ever beheld in your lifetime. And as they're passing by, you say, "Oh, nice to meet you," and they're still there in the room, and you go and you eat and you drink your lunch. Take your little paper bag, you open it up on the sidewalk, and you start to eat. Are you crazy? You're standing before the Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Vayechazu es Elokim, the most impressive moment of revelation in human history, and their reaction is eating and drinking? That's what Rashi says in a critical fashion. Therefore, despite that grave error, lo shalach yado, God didn't stretch his hand out to punish them. Their punishment was delayed until later, perhaps, says Chazal. But in this moment, they weren't punished, despite the fact that Yochazu es Elokim vayochlu vayishtu, that they made the grave mistake of facing the revelation of God and eating and drinking. That's the perspective of Rashi in the Medrash Tanchuma. The Targum Onkelos has a different take. Targum Onkelos, the Aramaic translation of the Torah, translates this pasuk as follows: "L'rav revei b'nei Yisrael," etc., the elders of Israel, the nobles of Israel, v'chazu yad yakra de Hashem, they saw the greatness or the value or the preciousness of God, v'havu chadan b'kurbanehon, de'iskablu bera'ua kilu achlin v'shatin. They were so happy with their sacrifices, it's as if they were enjoying the most beautiful meal of eating and drinking. How does the Targum Onkelos interpret this pasuk? That the Atzilei b'nei Yisrael witnessed the great revelation of God. And how did they react to that revelation? They reacted by sacrificing to God. The proper spiritual reaction. The very beautiful spiritual reaction, the expected spiritual reaction to this moment of revelation. And it was on such a heightened level, such an enthusiastic level, so filled with love and passion, that it was as meaningful to them as sitting down for the most delicious meal that gives you physical pleasure. They were getting spiritual pleasure out of the experience of the korbanos. Two different perspectives on the pasuk. And the Netivot Shalom comes to explain the perspective of the Targum Onkelos and further that point in terms of our understanding of this scene, understanding the behavior of the Atzilei b'nei Israel, and perhaps actually carving a third road in between Rashi and the Targum Onkelos. He says, Yesh lomar, we can understand this. La'achar ha'ma'amar ha'niskav shel kabbalas haTorah, v'gilui ha'elokus ha'muflag. After the incredible experience of revelation of Matan Torah, of closeness to God, of revelation of God's incredible presence, Sheniftachu kol zayin harikim, all 7 levels of heaven were open up to us. V'rau hakol she'ein od milvado, everyone, including certainly the elders, were on a higher level. They saw ein od milvado, that they realized there's nothing in the world but God. Everything is God. Everything is God given and God mandated. That was the level they were at. She'az hayu bebechinas malas hakasuv. They were on the level described in the pasuk in Tehillim. Ani amarti Elokim atem ubnei elyon kulchem. We were all on the level of the angels, on the level of the gods, in the entirely different stratosphere, so close to God that we were almost on that level. That's the level we were at vayechazu es Elokim. V'kevan shekain yadu, and because of their high spiritual level, they knew, they understood. Shebevadai ata yagiu Eloki eleihem nisayan gadol, ki zelu matzeh asa Elokim. They knew that they would be tested very greatly, because with every measure of greatness comes a higher level of responsibility and the need for a higher level of restraint. So what was that test that came their way, that slapped them in the face, that shocked them in that moment of greatness and revelation? Uve'ikar nitzva bifneihem ha'she'ela, eich le'achar gilui ko kadosh, yashpilu atzmam l'chol inyanei olam hazeh, kolel inyanei ha'hechreach shel ha'olam hazeh. How, after being on such a high spiritual level, would they ever come back down to live in this world as human beings, as they had to do? How would they ever come down to the level where they could engage in physical activity? Not even enjoyable, luxurious physical activity, but necessary physical activity that was absolutely critical for the sustaining of human life. Like, of course, eating and drinking. That when the pasuk says vayochazu es Elokim, vayochlu vayishtu, it meant they were on such a high spiritual level, and then they were struck by the incredibly difficult question and dilemma of how they could come down to eat and drink. Eating and drinking, not literally, but code word for involvement in every aspect of physicality in this world. How would they ever descend to be involved in those very basic, mundane things after being on such a high level? The answer was that they held themselves at the level of vayochazu es Elokim. And what does that mean? It means that they established for themselves a direction towards Yiras Hashem and Avas Hashem. And he says both are hinted to in those words, vayochazu es Elokim. Elokim, of course, is synonymous with Midas Hadin, with Midas Hagvura, with Midas Hayira, with the aspect of fear of God, of awe of God, of judgment of God, of strictness of God. That's Elokim. And Vayochazu, he says, proves from different places that that idea of Vayochazu, that we saw God, in every place it's mentioned, is synonymous with the love of God, the incredibly intense and passionate and close, intimate relationship of human beings and God. So in that phrase, Vayochazu es Elokim, they not only teach us, the Torah not only teaches us that they witnessed God, that they saw the revelation of God, that they rose to the incredible high spiritual level that they were on, but rather that they received their direction about how to come down from that level and deal with Vayochlu Vayishtu, with the physicality of this world. And the directive was Vayachazu, to have Avas Hashem, and Es Elokim, to have Yiras Hashem. And with those two, they could come to carve a pathway to be able to navigate the physical world even after being on high spiritual level. That's actually our pathway of every human being in this world. That we should always follow the pathway of Vayochazu es Elokim. We should always try to arouse within ourselves the dechilu and the rechimu, the fear, the awe, and the love, the compassion. V'zeh yishmor alav shelo yipol lish'ol tachtis be'osko binyane olam hazeh gam achrei kol hagiluyim. That will be the safeguard to prevent us from ever falling too low from that great spiritual height, despite the involvement in the things of this world, despite the involvement in the mundane and in the physical. V'zehu pirush, that's the meaning of El Atzilei b'nei Yisrael lo shalach yado, the beginning of the pasuk. What does it mean? He didn't stretch his hand to them. Shelo shalta behem achizas hachitzonim be'eis vayochlu vayishtu, mikevan shekaimu veyochazu es Elokim b'dilchilu urechimu. El Atzilei b'nei Israel, to the nobles of Israel. Here's how we'll read the pasuk according to Netivot Shalom. El Atzilei b'nei Israel, to the nobles of Israel who were high up on Har Sinai, who reached the incredible level of heights of revelation and closeness with God, who are wondering how they will ever navigate this world again, how they will ever come down from that high spiritual level to be involved in physicality. Answer to them was, there is a pathway forward. And because of that pathway forward, Lol shal shlach yado, that the externals of the world didn't grab hold of them and pull them down. The physicality of the world was lo shalach yado. It didn't grab hold of them and suck them into the physicality of the world. Why? Because of vayochazu es Elokim. Because they saw God. How did they see God? With ava and yira, with love of God and fear of God. Netivot Shalom is saying something very basic to Hasidus over here, but very basic to Judaism over here, something very, very important for all of us. What he's saying is physicality per se is not necessarily something bad that takes us away from godliness, from revelation, from spirituality, but it can. When you become involved in the physicality of this world, you do run the risk of being alienated and distanced from things that are higher, things that are more spiritual, things that are more elevated. But it doesn't have to be that way. The way you can change it from being something that sucks you down and distracts you from God to being something that elevates you and continues to bring you closer to God is by infusing every act in the physical world with Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. By looking around in the world in everyday experiences, in everyday functions, in everyday physicality, and seeing the beauty of God, seeing the love of God, and imagining God before our eyes so that we develop within ourselves a Yiras Hashem. Not a fear of God, but an awe of God. A palpable sense of the presence of God. That's Yiras Hashem. When you imagine every moment that God is before you, you not only bring the presence of God into your life and into every moment of physicality, but you also transform those moments of physicality into being something much higher, something much holier, something much more elevated. He says that's why all of Shulchan Aruch begins with that mandate. He says if you look in Shulchan Aruch, you realize that the directive of Shulchan Aruch was Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, that you should always have the image of God before you. You should always have that as your starting point of your day. When you realize that, and when you put that before you, it directs every physical action that's going to come, that the Shulchan Aruch begins to describe. It begins by describing all the processes of the morning of going to the bathroom, washing your hands, and then starting your meal, and how you wash and how you bench. Every moment of the day is infused with that godliness and that perspective. And by doing that, you do what's called in Hasidus, although he doesn't mention it directly here in this particular Ma'amar, but you get to the level of what's called avodah b'gashmius, of serving God through the gashmius, allowing the gashmius to lift you and to elevate you and bring you closer to God, rather than distract you and pull you away. And that's the secret that was learned by the Atzilei b'nei Israel in that moment. The idea of Kedusha, the idea of elevating ourselves through the matters of this world and reaching the highest levels of spirituality, says Netivot Shalom, is something we have to work hard at. We have to develop within ourselves a Yiras Hashem. And if you develop that Yiras Hashem within you, God will take you the rest of the way. God will carry you level after level in Yiras Hashem until you reach the great matana, the great gift of Avas Hashem, of being so suffused with the love and the presence of God that you come to serve God in every way possible, through physicality and through spirituality. He says that mitzvah to be kadosh, to be elevated, to be tahor, is kol Yehudi mesugal lahagiel, that every Jew should realize that they are capable of reaching that level. Shema Kadosh Baruch Hu tziva linyanim elu b'Torah. If God commanded all of us to be holy in the Torah, hare kol Yehudi shayach mesugal lahagiel l'chol ma shekas b'Torah. Every Jew is capable of reaching everything that's written in the Torah. V'chol hapsukim v'atem tiyu l'malach konim v'goy kadosh v'anshi kodesh tiyu li and kadoshim tiyu. All of the mandates for kedusha, for elevated spiritual holy living in the Torah, hem anesulim la Yehudi koch liskadish b'tchilaso hishtadlus v'sofa matana, gives the power to every Jew to start to work hard at it and then receive the rest as a matana of Hashem, taking you the rest of the way. Yehudi mechuyav lehamin, a Jew is obligated to believe. Shekol haTorah nitna ba'avuro, that the entire Torah was given for you, in specific. Every Jew has to believe Shu Chelek Elokam Imal. Every Jew has to believe that they are an emanation of the divine, that you have a divine neshama within you. V'yesh bo koach Eloi lahasig kol ma shenemar b'Torah. And every Jew has to believe that they have this elevated strength within them to be able to achieve anything that's written in the Torah, any mandate of the Torah, any mitzvah of the Torah, any goal or aim or striving of the Torah. This is part of the foundations of our belief, the belief of the Jew, that no matter how physically sunk in this world you are, no matter how consumed you are by the mundane, that you have the capacity to rise above that, not by rejecting the mundane and the physical, not by leaving it behind, but by infusing it with Yiras Hashem, striving hard, working hard, toiling in Yiras Hashem, and eventually reaching the level of Avas Hashem, so that everything in the world is infused with the two, elevated, and simultaneously elevates not only you to higher levels of Kedusha, but the entire world to higher levels of Kedusha as well. That's the mandate of the Jew, and that is within the reach of the Jew. And that is the lesson learned from the Pasuk of the Atzilei B'nai Israel, the nobles of Israel, the Zakein of Israel, in the aftermath of the heights of revelation, figured out a way to go Vayochlu Vayishtu, to come down into the physical world. And their method was Vayochazu es Elokim. You should always keep that vision of God before you with the Yiras Hashem of Elokim and the Avas Hashem of Vayochazu. Together, that winning combination can keep you on the straight and narrow, can keep you from being sucked down into the physical, and strive and inspire you to be elevated by the physical and come closer to Hashem. Shabbat Shalom.